Hello everyone, this is Mouse961 here, and I'm going to show you guys today how to make a Warp Drive Reactor, in short. The requirements for it are 1 Enantiomorphic Reactor core, 4 reactor stabilization lasers, and 4 laser mediums. Make sure you have the filled ones instead of the empty ones, because the empty ones are useless. Eventually it will look something like this. You can customize it to your own liking. And yeah, I'm just going to go over real quick how to build that, how to set it up, and how to get it running. So in the very beginning, you're going to need a reactor core, and that's going to be the center of your reactor. And on each of the sides, you're going to need a stabilization laser. What it does is each of these lasers will shoot a laser beam into the reactor, increasing its stability and keep it from, in short, blowing up. And on top of each of the stabilization lasers, you want to put these particle boosters, which when you first place them, they will look like this. They won't be the purple one that you have in your inventory here. Okay, next up, you have to take either a conduit or a capacitor bank. It doesn't really matter which one you use. But for this, I'm just going to drop 3 of them right there. Hook up the laser mediums to the capacitor bank. Right-click on it, set the outputs. You want to output to the stabilization lasers, and you want to input from the reactor. So you apply power to the lasers then shoot towards the reactor, keeping it stable, and the reactor then produces power, outputting to the capacitor bank. And also to note, you do need power in this before you turn it on. It doesn't magically make power without first giving something. Okay, so you have to make sure that nothing is between the reactor and the lasers, because they won't work. Also, there has to be a single block between the two of them. Just one block. Okay, and then, lastly, on the bottom of each of the 5 components, you want to put a wired modem from Computercraft, or whatever the equivalent is from Open Computers. Hook wires up to each of them, and of course, right-click them to turn them on. And once you have all of them placed, you will then have your network. Take a advanced computer, place it down. Also put a wired modem and right-click on the back. And then all you do is right-click. If you are on our servers, you automatically have the programs for this, meaning that all you have to do is hook it up to any of the Warp Drive components, and you'll get this nice screen here saying how it works. So as you can see along the bottom, you have currently 3 options. You got to exit, which just sends you back to here. Also, you have 0 for connections, which is the screen that we are currently in, and 1 for the actual reactor. Okay, this screen has a lot of numbers on it, and they're actually pretty easy to do. The sides of the reactor are labeled 1 through 3. As far as which one's actually what, I have no idea. If you really want, you can test it, but it doesn't matter. The stability percentage, which is currently green and all 4 at 100%, is the stability of the reactor core. On the right-hand side, where it says lasers and it has 100,000, is the amount of energy that's left inside of the stabilization lasers. It's essentially how much battery is left in it. The next line down where it says energy, and it is 0 out of 100 million-ish. That is the internal power bank for the reactor, and it says how much power is inside the reactor for storage. And just to the right of that is a very important number. That's where it says plus 0 RF per tick, is how much power the reactor is actually creating. So for example, if it's plus 10, it would be creating 10 RF per tick, but obviously that's quite a small number for this reactor. Again, next line down, outputting, it shows how much RF per tick the reactor is actually outputting. Activated is whether or not the reactor is turned on. Output mode. This can be a tricky one. There are a few different settings for it. There's hold, which means it will not output at all. There's the manual or unlimited, which you can set later on, but it essentially outputs everything it possibly can. Surplus above. You can change this number with the output rate and threshold, which is the G and T key, which just adds or subtracts a 0. You can change however much you want to output. So for example, if you have 100,000 RF in the reactor, it would only dump off RF until there's only 100,000 left in the reactor. And the next setting is the rated at. What this does is you can set a number that you want the reactor to output at. It can be useful, for example, if your reactor is creating 32,000 RF per tick, you don't want to use more than 32,000 RF per tick because you'll drain the battery and it's just bad. It's better to have power in your reactor because that's the more power in it, the more power it can create due to heat and other factors like that. So it's better, like, if you're creating 32,000, you'd only use 30,000 of it. And eventually your reactor would have the 100 million or whatever I said before. The next line down is the target stability. Essentially, what happens is the reactor stability, as it goes down, it'll keep going down until it hits that target stability, and once it drops below that, whatever side drops below that percentage will have a laser fire from that side, increasing the percentage, which I'll show you more once I actually turn this on. And the reactor essentially has a goal of keeping as close as possible to that target stability. And the last number is the laser amount. What this is the laser amount is how much power the lasers shoot with to provide more stability to the reactor. So for example, right now it will shoot a 10,000 RF laser into the reactor, increasing the stability by whatever the percentages are. I don't really remember what it is because I think there's some random values in it. But if you press the C key, you can go into the reactor output rate, which I prefer leaving around, well, I'll leave for 2 for now because it doesn't really matter. Laser energy level. Personally, everyone can have their own settings. It really doesn't matter what the number is. Oh, okay, that's not true at all. You want to fire the laser as little as possible, but you also don't want to fire too much into it because you'll just drain your battery. So 10,000, if it drops too low too fast, it'll start shooting faster. And actually, I should note that with the reactor, if you shoot the laser too fast into the reactor, it will actually increase the instability or decrease stability. So you don't want to shoot too often, but you also don't want to waste your entire battery in one shot. So 25,000 is a good number. You can always change the number based on whatever you want. And for now, I will set the stability at 80%. And I will change output to hold so we increase our power. And I'll hit S to start the reactor. And as you can see, we are still, you can watch the percentages going down now. You can see that they're not all the same because there is a bit of randomness in it. And over here on the right-hand side, you see we are already producing 300 RF per tick, which is pretty good. And the internal battery is at 80,000. So we are approaching 90% stability on all sides. Once we get closer to 80, I'll show you what happens to the actual reactor itself. Note, all of them are green right now. Green is good. If your stability gets too low, what you should see here in a second, yep, you saw the red, it starts shooting, and it just shows where the numbers are, where you don't want them, or where your settings don't want them. So we'll come look at the laser, and you can see the laser shooting into the reactor nice and slow. We're not causing problems for it. And looks like we're still losing more power than we're gaining, which is not a surprise. I chose the vibrant capacitor bank because it has the largest input-output, maximum input-output rates mostly because the reactor can output mass amounts of power. And the more of these you have, the more you can input and output at a single tick. So we're sitting around 3,000 RF per tick, which means I could... Nope. I just hit P, which means I stopped the reactor, and it's not really good to do that. At least unless you really want to. So I'll hit O. Nope. Surplus above 2. Nope. Rated at 2 RF per tick. I find this is the safest way to do it, because once your reactor hits a maximum capacity in its energy bank, you will probably produce around 32 to 35,000 RF per tick. The higher your stability, the lower your output is, but it's also less of a risk, because once your reactor hits 0, it starts blowing up. And it really blows up. It's not good. So I'll now increase to 2,000 RF per tick. And you can see we are still losing some power. It fluctuates around depending on how much the lasers are firing. And you can always go back into the configuration menu while it's still running. Like it'll still hold all of your old settings while you're in here at least. So I'm going to change my stability down to 40%, which means it will stop shooting all lasers until the stabilities on the left side here start hitting 40%, or 39.9%, which then it will fire and it'll jump back up to 42%, and then slowly drop back down and continue. But as you can see, as the stability goes down, my RF per tick is increasing, but the reactor is still in warm-up mode, because, well, it takes time for it to warm up. Kind of like a, I can't even think of a reactor that does this. Essentially, you just want lots of power in it before you start draining power. And eventually we'll get there. Actually, also, you'll notice that the bottom there is where all the keys are for it. You have start reactor, stop reactor. You can manually use the lasers with L, which I could probably do right here to show a warning sign. There's also warning explosions that don't actually do damage. Output mode, configuration, which to get to the configuration menu, it's this one. And it will hold all your settings, so you can just hit enter every time, and it'll use your old settings. The plus and minus keys are actually difficult. It's not the ones next to your backspace key. The plus and minus are actually on the number pad on the right side of your keyboard. So like I can start hitting the minus, and you'll see that my target stability here is going down. And also if I start going up, you will notice that the percentages keep going to red. Laser amount. I wouldn't really use those keys because I think it's still, yeah, it goes by zeros, so you really don't want to use that one. Output rate and threshold. That's the one that I was currently using, where we're rated at 2,000. But if I hit T again, I'll go to 20,000, which it outputs at 20,000 RF a tick. But you also notice that because the power is going down, my power production is also going down. But we are producing 20,000. Or we are outputting 20,000 RF a tick, which you can see in the little GUI, or the info box up there. But because I want to actually produce power, I will reduce that to 2,000 RF per tick. And now I'm going to show you, hopefully you can hear it. The explosions there were because we were shooting too many lasers into it at once, which it actually does no damage. It just gives a little explosion effect with no block damage, which, let's see if I can do it again. Yeah. So it doesn't really do any damage, although it does put a lot more stability into it. As you can see from the numbers here, it's significantly higher than it was before. But yeah, that's pretty much how the reactor works. I guess I could set it to go critical here. And 1% stability. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. You know, I should probably break this as well. But yes, the most I've ever. Also note the reactor turning red when the instability is quite high. and eventually it will blow up. Now, I'm doing the lasers a lot, and you can see it's actually dropping down the stability faster than if it wasn't running. So I'm just going to stand back here. Farther back. Yep, there. Up, and there it goes. So as you can see, it blows up most of your reactor. It sometimes keeps these because of just the way the explosions work. And I think the explosion actually starts from the center with a slight randomness of X, Y, and Z coordinate changes. So yeah, thanks for watching the video. Again, here's another diagram of it. I'll just go in circles around it so you can watch it. You have the reactor core in the center. You have the 4 stabilization lasers, 1 on each side. If it's done right, you'll see the blue circle with the green dots there and not on the sides. Also on top of those, you need the 4 laser mediums, which are also particle boosters, all going to the center, which is I highly recommend a vibrant capacitor bank, because the energy, I guess the energy conduit is rated at 20,000, but you can get higher than 20,000 with the reactor. I mean, this reactor, last night I had it running at 34,000 RF per tick, and that's just what it was creating. I set it to the unlimited mode, and it started outputting at 70,000 RF a tick, which is pretty insane. I mean, you could do a lot of stuff with all that. Well, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas for me, just go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section below. And coming up soon, I will probably be doing a video on lasers, which here are lasers, and all the fun they can do. Let's see if, yep, still works. Yeah. So yeah, next up is lasers. Maybe I'll also do a few other videos on top of that, just going over how Warp Drive works. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.